Have you ever felt like you're drowning in plain sight, like there's an invisible weight pressing down on your chest even when everything appears perfectly normal? Imagine lying in bed at night, surrounded by complete safety, yet your heart races as if you're being chased by something that doesn't exist. Your mind spins with scenarios that haven't happened, conversations that might never occur, failures that exist only in your imagination. And the most maddening part, you can't explain why. What if I told you that this feeling, this constant state of alert that you've been told to medicate, manage, or simply get over might actually be the most honest response to the world around you? What if the very thing you've been fighting against is actually your consciousness trying to wake you up? This isn't another video about breathing exercises or positive thinking. This isn't about finding your calm or learning to manage your symptoms. What you're about to discover might be uncomfortable, even disturbing, but it could also be the key to understanding something fundamental about yourself and the reality you're living in. The tension you feel when your phone buzzes with notifications, the knot in your stomach when you think about tomorrow's responsibilities, the way your mind races through endless possibilities of what could go wrong. These aren't signs of weakness or mental illness. They're signs that you're more awake than most people, walking around in a comfortable haze of denial. Alan Watts, the philosopher who dared to speak uncomfortable truths, once said something that changes everything about how we view anxiety. The desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing. Think about that for a moment. The very act of trying to feel secure is what makes you feel insecure. The more you grasp for control, the more out of control you feel. It's like trying to catch your own shadow. The harder you chase it, the more it eludes you. But here's where it gets really interesting. What if this isn't a bug in your system? What if it's a feature? What if anxiety isn't something wrong with you, but something right about your perception of a world that has gone fundamentally off track? Consider this. You're living in a body that evolved over millions of years to survive in a completely different world. Your brain was designed to handle immediate physical threats, a predator in the wilderness, a natural disaster, a tribal conflict. Your stress response was meant to activate, help you survive, then shut off, like a zebra that escapes a lion and immediately returns to grazing peacefully. But now your ancient alarm system is triggered by emails, social media notifications, news headlines, and the endless stream of abstract threats that your modern world presents. Your body can't tell the difference between a charging lion and a passive-aggressive text message. Both trigger the same biological response: rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, muscle tension, the flood of stress hormones designed to help you fight or flee. Robert Sapolsky, one of the world's leading neuroscientists, reveals something shocking in his research. Humans are the only animals that can trigger stress responses through pure imagination. A zebra doesn't lie awake at night worrying about next week's potential lion encounter, but you can work yourself into a panic attack just by thinking about a conversation you might have to have next month. This is why breathing exercises and meditation apps often feel like putting a Band-Aid on a severed artery. They're treating the symptom, not the cause. The cause isn't that you're anxious, it's that you're a prehistoric being trying to navigate a hyper-modern world with a nervous system that was never meant for this kind of chronic, abstract stress. But here's the twist that changes everything. What if your anxiety isn't a malfunction, but a message? What if it's your deepest self trying to tell you something crucial about how you're living? Think about when your anxiety peaks. Is it when you're being truly authentic, living in alignment with your deepest values? Or is it when you're performing, pretending, trying to be someone you're not? Is it when you're present in the moment? Or when you're lost in projections about the future? Is it when you're connected to what matters, or when you're caught up in the endless pursuit of external validation? Your anxiety might be the canary in the coal mine of your soul. It might be the part of you that refuses to go quietly into the good night of conformity, that won't let you sleepwalk through a life that doesn't fit who you really are. It might be your internal GPS recalculating when you stray too far from your authentic path. The modern world tells you to medicate this signal, to suppress it, to manage it like a inconvenient symptom. But what if suppressing your anxiety is like disconnecting your car's check engine light? The light isn't the problem. it's trying to tell you about the problem? What if the very sensitivity that makes you anxious is also what makes you capable of deeper connection, greater creativity, more profound insight? What if the people who never feel anxious aren't the healthy ones, but the ones who have successfully numbed themselves to the reality of existence? This is where we need to make a distinction that could change your life. There's a difference between pathological anxiety, the kind that prevents you from functioning, and existential anxiety, the kind that arises from being awake in a world full of sleeping people. One is a disorder to be treated. The other is a sign of consciousness to be honored. Your anxiety might be telling you that you're living someone else's life, that you're pursuing goals that don't align with your values, that you're surrounded by people who don't really see you, that you're participating in systems that violate your deepest sense of what's right, that you're moving so fast through life that you've lost touch with what actually matters. The question isn't how to get rid of this feeling. The question is, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What would happen if, instead of fighting against your anxiety, you listened to it? What if you honored it as a form of intelligence, even if it's an uncomfortable one? What if your anxiety is actually your sanity responding to an insane world? What if it's your heart refusing to accept a life that's too small for your spirit? What if it's your soul's way of saying, this isn't it? There's something more, something truer, something more alive waiting for you. But if that's true, then everything you've been told about anxiety is wrong. And if everything you've been told is wrong, then maybe the solution isn't in the self-help aisle or the therapist's office or the prescription pad. Maybe the solution is in learning to see your anxiety not as a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be explored. Now, we'll dive deeper into this mystery. We'll explore what happens when you stop running from your anxiety and start running toward it. You'll discover what your body and mind are really trying to tell you, and how this uncomfortable feeling might actually be the beginning of the most important conversation you'll ever have, the one with your authentic self. You understand? Anxiety might be a message rather than a malfunction. The question becomes, how do you decode what it's trying to tell you? How do you transform this uncomfortable sensation from an enemy into an ally? How do you learn to surf the waves instead of being crushed by them? The first step requires a radical shift in perspective. Instead of asking, how do I get rid of this feeling? You need to start asking, what is this feeling trying to show me? This isn't just a mental exercise. It's a fundamental reorientation of your relationship with your own experience. Alan Watts understood that the root of psychological suffering lies in our resistance to what is. We create elaborate fantasies about how life should be, then torture ourselves when reality doesn't conform to our expectations. We want certainty in an uncertain world, control in an uncontrollable universe, security in a reality that is fundamentally insecure. This resistance shows up in your body as chronic tension. Your shoulders carry the weight of trying to hold everything together. Your jaw clenches with the effort of keeping your emotions in check. Your breathing becomes shallow as you brace against the next wave of uncertainty. Your entire nervous system remains on high alert, scanning for threats that exist primarily in your imagination. But what if you stopped bracing? What if you relaxed into the uncertainty instead of fighting against it? This doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned. It means recognizing that your resistance to anxiety is what gives it so much power over you. The moment you stop fighting the feeling, it begins to lose its grip. Topolsky's research reveals something crucial about the stress response. It's not the stressor itself that damages us, but the chronic activation of stress systems. A zebra being chased by a lion experiences intense stress, but as soon as the danger passes, its nervous system returns to baseline. The zebra doesn't spend the next 3 hours replaying the chase or the next week worrying about when the next lion might appear, but humans have the unique ability to keep stress hormones flooding our system long after any real danger has passed. We do this through rumination, projection, and what psychologists call catastrophic thinking. We turn a single challenging situation into evidence that everything is falling apart. We transform a moment of uncertainty into a narrative of impending doom. The key to working with anxiety isn't to eliminate these thoughts and feelings, but to change your relationship with them. Instead of identifying with your anxiety, I am anxious, you learn to observe it. I notice anxiety arising. This subtle shift creates space between you and the experience, allowing you to respond rather than react. This is where the practice of presence becomes essential. Presence isn't a spiritual concept, it's a practical tool for nervous system regulation. When you bring your full attention to this moment, to the sensations in your body right now, to the breath moving in and out of your lungs, you're sending a signal to your brain that you're safe enough to be here. But presence requires practice, especially when anxiety is pulling you into stories about the future or regrets about the past. It means learning to notice when your mind has hijacked your attention and gently returning to the anchor of your immediate experience, your breath, your body, the sounds around you, the feeling of your feet on the ground. This isn't about suppressing anxious thoughts or forcing yourself to think positively. It's about creating enough space around your thoughts and feelings that they don't completely overwhelm you. It's about remembering that you are larger than any single emotion or experience. The practice of presence also reveals something profound about the nature of anxiety itself. When you really pay attention to anxious feelings in your body, you notice that they're constantly changing. They arise, peak, and dissolve, often much faster than your stories about them would suggest. The sensation you thought would last forever actually lasts only a few minutes when you stop feeding it with mental narrative. But presence alone isn't enough. You also need to address the underlying patterns that keep anxiety alive. This is where the work of authentic living becomes crucial. Much of our anxiety stems from the exhausting effort of maintaining a false self, the version of yourself that you think you need to be accepted, successful, or safe. This false self requires constant maintenance. You have to monitor your words, manage your image, suppress inconvenient emotions, and perform competence even when you feel lost. It's like wearing a mask that's slightly too small. It requires constant adjustment and causes chronic discomfort. Your anxiety might be your authentic self rebelling against this performance. It might be the part of you that's tired of pretending, tired of people pleasing, tired of living according to other people's expectations. It might be your soul's way of saying, this isn't who we really are. The journey toward authenticity isn't always comfortable, requires you to acknowledge parts of yourself you've been hiding, to speak truths you've been avoiding, to make changes you've been postponing. It means risking disappointment, rejection, or conflict in service of something more important, your integrity. But here's what's remarkable. The more aligned you become with your authentic self, the less anxious you feel, not because you've eliminated uncertainty from your life, but because you're no longer carrying the additional burden of being someone you're not. You're anxious about real things that matter to you, not imaginary threats to a false identity. This process also involves learning to trust your body's wisdom. Your nervous system holds information that your thinking mind often misses. That gut feeling that something isn't right, that's data. The way your energy drops around certain people, that's information. The activities that leave you feeling depleted versus energized, your body is constantly giving you feedback about what serves you and what doesn't. Learning to listen to these somatic signals is like learning a new language, the language of your deepest knowing. It requires slowing down enough to notice subtle sensations, patterns of tension and relaxation, the way different environments affect your nervous system. As you develop this somatic awareness, you begin to make different choices. You start honoring your need for rest instead of pushing through exhaustion. You begin setting boundaries with people who drain your energy. You pursue activities that genuinely nourish you rather than just look good on paper. You create a life that fits your actual nervous system, not the one you think you should have. This isn't a quick fix or a simple solution. It's a lifelong practice of learning to be present with your experience, authentic in your expression, and responsive to your body's wisdom. It's about transforming your relationship with uncertainty from one of terror to one of curiosity. Your anxiety doesn't disappear through this process, it transforms. Instead of being a source of suffering, it becomes a source of information. Instead of something to avoid, it becomes something to investigate. Instead of evidence that something is wrong with you, it becomes evidence that you're paying attention to what's real. The goal isn't to live without anxiety, but to live with it skillfully, to recognize it as part of the human experience rather than a personal failing, to honor it as a form of sensitivity rather than pathology, to see it as a sign that you care deeply about something, your relationships, your work, your values, your future. In the end, you're not anxious because you're broken, you're anxious because you're awake. And being awake in a world full of sleeping people is bound to be uncomfortable sometimes, but it's also the only way to live a life that's truly yours. The anxiety you feel might just be the price of admission to a more authentic, more meaningful, more fully lived existence. And that perhaps makes it worth listening to after all.